So tens of thousands of workers across Nigeria were poised to heed the call of this country's largest and most powerful unions, the firebrand NLC and the TUC, to take to the streets from today in protest against the soaring cost of living. If they had, it would have led to a major labour crisis, and the government and Nigeria's weakening economy would have faced a reckoning. But those fires will not now be stoked, and there'll be no showdown, at least for 30 days. It follows hours of deliberations between the unions and the federal government, during which a deal was signed and the government promised it would meet the demands of the workers, aimed at mitigating the sharp price rises that have followed the removal of fuel subsidies. So, a temporary band-aid over a gushing wound, or is the crisis now over? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from Abuja by the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Ajaero, for joining us. We understand you've had a long, busy day. You look a little bit red-eyed there, but thank you for taking the time to talk to us, because obviously this is an important issue. Briefly, what has persuaded the unions to call off the strike? Why have they decided to give the Nigerian government a second chance? Unfortunately, we can't hear you, Mr. Ajaero. I don't know what's going on with the sound, but we can't hear you here. I would have thought that all this would have been tested ahead of time, but obviously they're going to fiddle a little bit with the buttons and hope that we can connect with Mr. Ajaero and that he can hear us and we can hear him. He obviously sounded like he could hear me, but obviously this exceedingly important issue because it would have had a strike that potentially could cripple the Nigerian economy, and certainly it would affect a lot of people. I understand we've got you back, Mr. Ajaero. I apologize for that. Just some of the challenges with connecting when we're sort of doing things on location. But I was asking you, what has persuaded the unions to call off the strike, and why have you decided to give the Nigerian government a second chance?
Yeah, I was saying that in life there's always a second chance. You know, if you watch from the time we gave the first strike notice to the time we did our rally, you know, the essence of going about organizing rally and protest was for the government, you know, to have a second thought. We equally went to the extent of having a warning strike about 3 weeks ago, and this time around we went for the kill, which is a total strike. And when we saw them, you know, showing some seriousness, because for the 21 days we gave the ultimatum, nothing happened. They didn't talk with us. It was even a period of maybe 3-4 days or 1 week grace that this whole exercise, you know, started. But Mr. President set up the agenda by announcing 25,000 naira wage award, you know, and which he said was for the least paid worker, and we didn't have what is called the least paid worker, you know. That was, and before you know it was followed up, you know, by meetings. The first meeting on Friday, we decided not to be part of it because we have discovered this attitude of Nigerian state to hold meeting at the eve of the expiration of our ultimatum. So, but, you know, pressure came. Nigerians from all walks of life started talking about the economy and the effect on the common man, you know. So we had to even meet on a Sunday and on a public holidays. And then after that, we were allowed to give them what we call a second chance. And that was why you saw the issue of 30 days. In the history of labor-government relations, when we call off strike or when we suspend strike, we suspend strike. But this one, we suspended a strike, you know, for 30 days to watch the level of progress. And in suspending that strike, we decided that whatever is the MOU must be deposited in court, must be registered in court, so that the parties will understand their obligation in terms of what we, covenanted to. So based on that, we hope that government, will live up to the letters of, or the intent of the agreement.
Nevertheless, I mean, it sounds more like a band-aid over a gushing wound, and like the crisis isn't over yet. I mean, if you've given them 30 days, then clearly you're still holding your breath.
Yeah, the crisis is not over because of the era of broken promises. The crisis is not yet over because of the trust gap between the Nigerian leaders and the governed. Now, it is difficult for you to just close the trust gap by mere promissory note. If you listen to Mr. President's speech, you discover that all were promises, promissory note. And we could have dismissed that, the government are not really serious. But we decided to see how we can translate those promises to reality. And it's not like these things will be achieved in 30 days' time. But within that 30 days' time, there are some of them that could be achieved. Some others would have, started. We'll see the level of progress within that period. So if we are all confident and we say we want to trust them, there should be evidence, that they actually meant business. And those are some of the things we are supposed to evaluate within this 30 days bracket. I think that's the best thing, one of the best paragraphs in that agreement.
So what if some of what you are asking for, some of what the unions are asking for, isn't given to them? What happens then?
Well, like when we had the first meeting with them, we went back to our organs. And then even when our ultimatum expired, we went back to our organs. That is where we draw our power. That's where we draw our mandate. If at the end of the 1 month, all that we agreed we are not fulfilled, or there's no move to actualize them, we get back to those organs and take a fresh mandate, because it's important we understand that an action that was suspended is not called off, and we don't need to give fresh ultimatum. So that is the way it is. We'll still get back to our people, even if they fulfill all. We still get back to our people at the expiration of that 30 days to reevaluate, what we have achieved, the level of compliance and efforts made so far in ensuring that the agreements are honored.
But it seemed to you, and listening to what you're saying, that there was the political will on the part of the government to make sure that the unions get what they're asking for, which is why you sort of called off the strike, or at least suspended it for 30 days. So if there appears to be this goodwill from the federal government, why were the unions unhappy in the first place? Because if they were unhappy with the tough economic situation in the country and the consequences of the removal of subsidies and so on, that isn't going to go away in 30 days, is it?
Yeah, 30 days doesn't mean that the subsidy was removed for just 30 days. This October will be about the 5th month. And you agree with me that if government had that will we are talking about, they would have done a lot. By now, the element of CNG buses and whatever, we would have seen some plying the rules, even if they are not enough. The issue of even wage award, workers would have started receiving them. Even the issue of cash transfer, could have cleaned up the register to make sure that the people who are going to collect this money are the right people, and action would have been on by now. So when we talk about 1 month, it's 1 month in addition to about 4 months, that we have passed, no action, nothing has happened. Nobody was even communicating with us, nobody was conversing. And people are suffering, people are dying. So that was what happened in the case of, when you talk about 1 month, it's not just it's 1 month for them. They had 4 months before. This 1 month is in addition. Some of the agreements equally, like the CNG, we're expecting the reports, the results to start trickling in by November. It was stated clear. We didn't say that the CNG buses must all be imported and the keys must be imported and concluded, within 1 month. No, that one we gave a timeline of November. The issue of refineries, what we say was that there will be a joint visitation to the Port Harcourt refinery to look at the state of preparedness, for it to be in operation by December. So it's not like the refinery will start operation within 1 month. So those are the ways, we tell all this in to make sure that there's we negotiated in good faith, and that government is committed, through to walk the talk in terms of the agreement that we entered into with them.
And in terms of that agreement that you entered into, I mean, I know you touched on this briefly earlier, and you sort of mentioned it, but as a labor union leader, I mean, you lead arguably the most powerful union in West Africa, certainly arguably across the continent. I mean, as a labor union leader, are you assured that your members are going to be satisfied with the agreement that's been reached with the government? In other words, was it unanimous when you went back to them? Because you said your power derives from them. Was it unanimous? Was there a lot of argument? Were there people who rejected it and perhaps you rode roughshod over them?
Well, the issue of whether our members rejected it or not, even before we went back, we brought it raw, the way it was, and presented it to them at a NEC meeting an hour before the meeting with government on the second day. I wouldn't say it was easy, I wouldn't say it was rough, but people discussed objectively. And we saw the level of confidence, that if this is where you have gotten to this level, do it this way, do it this way, these ones are correct, these ones are perfect, but we need to touch A, B, C, D. And we went there, and got all those issues. If you watch Mr. President's address, initially was that he was going to give 25,000 for the least paid workers in the country. And that this is going to be for a period of 6 months. And then, now we went into it and said, no, it can't be for the least paid workers. And as we were talking, because we were asking initially whether the confidence, each item we deliberated on, they get back to him, they go back to him physically to get approval. Now, we got that one that is across board. Now, we moved into the issue of the figure. When the issue of the figure, we debated it from up to even the 35,000. The 35,000 was that, where they said, they can't go below this. And then that we should remember that we're having a minimum wage discussion, which should be concluded the next 6 months. So we looked at it, got at that. We didn't accept that until we got back to our people, because it was hanging between 40,000 and 35,000. Now, when we got that, we came back. Despite our agreement the previous day, or our argument that you can't give a wage, and withdraw it after 6 months, they still came back the following day insisting that it must be for a period of 6 months. And I think that almost created a stalemate, because we were about leaving the venue when we now reconvene and continue with the deliberation that this wage award will be there until a new minimum wage is signed into law. So those are some of the areas that they asked us to fine-tune, and we fine-tuned it. There were some other elements that came in on what happens to the lower income bracket, What happened to even the pensioner? Because there are pensioners that earn 5,000, 10,000. So how do you classify it if you are talking of the poorest of the poor? We looked at all those issues and went back, to the meeting with all those suggestions made by our members. And since yesterday and today, I will tell you that there is jubilation in the camp of the workers, because 30,000 has been the minimum wage Nigeria was able to achieve from 1977, 1978, when LLC came into existence. And now within 48 hours, there was an additional, no matter the name you call it, 35,000 on top of 30,000. I think, to an average Nigerian worker, I think they were happy with it. We are now looking at the way of operationalizing it in the private sector, in the states and local governments. Those are some of the areas we have sent out letters and circulars today to make sure that we perfect it, since the federal government can't dictate for the subnationals.
Yes, and thank you for explaining that in such detail. It certainly brings clarity to a lot of the areas that were not very clear. And I'm sure you know, Mr. Ajaero, that Arise News has an international audience. We have people watching this program right now across Africa, in the UK, across Europe, and so on. And many of them may not really know much about the NLC and the TUC. Just remind us of who is in these trade unions. I mean, they are umbrella bodies with lots of affiliates, aren't there, from both the public and the private sectors?
Exactly. The NLC, organizes unions in about 56 industrial unions that cut across the public and private sector, in almost every sector of the economy, even moving towards the informal sector, with the lottery union, the Okada Riders Association, all those ones, So because you can get more workers in the informal sector. So the NLC we are moving towards organizing the unorganized, especially in the informal sector, and in the public sector, whether the civil service, medical and health, local government, journalists, nurses and midwives, name them. In the private sector, those in oil and gas, electricity, banking, food and beverage, a whole lot of other sectors that constitute the private sector and the public sector, and including the parastatals, the ones in the aviation, the ones in the railways, on and on and on. So these are the people that make up the NLC, and we have been in existence from 1977, when this present NLC was formed. There have been so many labor centers in the country, even before the Civil War, up to this moment. So those are the people that constitute the NLC. It cuts across those in senior and junior category.
Well, thank you very much for explaining that. I'm sure the audience who are not familiar with it will appreciate it. But that suggests that you have a lot of power then as president of the NLC, and that the government shakes and trembles anytime you talk about going on strike.
Yeah, we have a lot of power, just like the American government possess nuclear weapon, but they don't use it. That's the same thing that happened probably after this action that was called up. The fact that you have a lot of power doesn't mean that you should use it anyhow, but it's important when people realize that you have such powers and you use it, with a lot of restraint. If you watch, we had to do protests, we didn't display the power of strike. We had to do 2 days action, we didn't display the power of a total shutdown or whatever. So in that order, that's the way we guard this power, because that power, could destroy, it could build. So we are conscious of this.
Yes, that's a very good point. And of course, in that context, beyond the unions and your affiliates, what do ordinary Nigerians and the populace at large think about the unions going on strike? I mean, because obviously they'll be affected by the clout of such a massive action.
Well, it's usually a mixed grill. If you watch this action we called off, many Nigerians are so angry, who are not even within the fold of the trade unions. They were saying, show them pepper, take this action. We have suffered enough. Those are what some of the words from Nigerians. Some are equally say, you guys have sold out. You guys are the same thing with the government. You guys have betrayed us. You guys are weak. You know, all these issues are coming up. You know, but principally, our responsibility should be for our members. But to have drawn this beyond that, you know, if you look at the agreement reached now, why the wage award could be said to be for workers, you know, who are members. The issue of CNG, for instance, is for all Nigerians. You know, if you are buying PMS to fill your vehicle at 50,000, and when the CNG comes and you buy it at 30,000 or 20,000, it is not restricted to the NLC and its members. When we got this issue of cash transfer, you know, to the less privileged, to the poorest of the poor, to the wretched of the earth, it's not to the NLC or NLC alone. It's for every Nigerian. When we got this tax relief from diesel, you discover that it's for every Nigerian. Almost every other thing there you are seeing is for other Nigerians. So NLC is not a selfish organization, you know, that will think of wage alone. We look at some other activities, some other benefits that will be accruable to other Nigerians.
Very, very interesting and very illuminating talking with you. I want to thank you very much indeed for taking the time from what we know has been a busy day for you to share your thoughts with us. Comrade Joe Ajaero is the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, and he was talking to me there on the line from Abuja.